In this video, I'm going to give you a rundown of the computers we use in the worship ministry at our church. Recently, we've been working with a lot of clients, helping them set up great infrastructure for their worship ministry to run all the tech. And this is a piece of it that I think I just really have taken for granted in the past. And I think a lot of us miss the fact that in order to have the right tech infrastructure for worship, you have to make sure you have the right computers in place to serve all the needs of your ministry. So to give you some context, my name is Jake. I'm the creator of Churchfront, but I'm also a worship leader, just like you. And I lead worship part-time at a church called Mission Lakewood. We are a almost 2-year-old church plant, and we set up and tear down every single week at a local high school. And when it comes to our values for worship, we really have a high value for excellence and making sure that we can have a really high creative capacity when it comes to the production elements of worship. So that gives you a little bit of context, I hope, for why we built the system the way we did and why we use the computers that we're using. So we have 3 machines that do all of the heavy lifting for our worship ministry. And I'm just gonna walk through each one of them. I'm gonna explain the specs behind that device and why we chose to use this device for that purpose. And then I'll talk about what applications the computer is running, as well as any important accessories that we had to get to make it function properly. So first, let's take a look at the computers in our tech booth. It's at the back of the room. This is where our sound engineer, as well as our media operator, is hanging out during rehearsal and the service. So computer number 1 is our presentation and lighting computer. This computer is a 15-inch MacBook Pro. It's a 2016 model. It is a 2.0 gigahertz quad-core i7. It has 16 gigabytes of RAM. It has 256 gigabytes of space on a solid-state internal drive. So we bought this computer shortly after we launched our church plant, and this computer was actually it was just an older model version that you could buy brand new on B&H Photo, and we were able to get a good deal. So I'd highly recommend, if you're buying a new Mac, check out that website, because you can find brand new Macs in stock, but they're like the previous year or even the year before model. So they're brand new, but the price is much less than if you would have bought it when it was released. And I wanted to note that if you are not a portable church like us, I would recommend going the iMac route for your tech booth computers, because they're just gonna sit there all the time. You're gonna have a nice 21-inch screen, even a 27-inch. I think that's probably a little overkill, but you can have more power for your dollar when you go the desktop iMac route. So let's talk about the applications on computer number 1. As I already said, it's for presentation and lighting. So those are our 2 main applications. For presentation software, we use either ProPresenter or Proclaim. I think those are the 2 best pieces of presentation software out there. We are currently using Proclaim. We really, really love it. We're gonna be making an in-depth review video about it soon. And then we also have used ProPresenter. I really love ProPresenter as well. So you can't go wrong with either one of these options. Next, we have LightKey. This is a Mac-based lighting software. It's a really beautiful piece of software. It's stable, it's easy to use, it's automation ready, so you can easily send cues from Ableton to trigger up all your lighting throughout worship. And yeah, LightKey is an awesome piece of software, so definitely check that out, especially if you're able to run your lighting software on a Mac. Another application we run on this computer is a Dante Virtual Sound Card. We run this app on all 3 of the computers so that we can send audio from the computers to or from our mixing console over the Dante network. And then we have Ableton Live running on this computer as well. And this is just a small Ableton project that simply sends MIDI cues to our primary Trax Rig Ableton computer, so it can just really function as a remote control. So our person in the tech booth can control songs, or they can actually just queue up simultaneous cues for presentation and lighting at the same time with one click of the button. So those are the applications that are running on this presentation and lighting computer, and we really just didn't want to put any more applications on this computer. If you wanted to, you could easily record your sermon audio, maybe in GarageBand, just record like 1 track of audio. I would just advise against running too much on this computer. You want it to make sure You want to make sure it's running efficiently. It's going to be stable. You don't want your presentation software or lighting software crashing on you in the middle of a service, because that would be a very obvious distraction. And then of course for this computer, we had to get a bunch of dongles. I can't stand how many dongles we have to get, but it's just the necessary evil when you're going the laptop route with this setup. So we have a lot of dongles that go from USB-C to USB for our DMX interface, as well as our MIDI automation interface that we use. Then we have dongles that go from USB-C to Ethernet, so we can connect it to the local area network. And then we also have a couple dongles that go from USB-C to HDMI. So when you're building out your computer setup, make sure you're taking into account all of the dongles that you have to get, because it's going to probably add up to a few $100s. So that is computer number one, our presentation and lighting computer. I think for the majority of churches, you at least have to have that one computer in your tech booth to accomplish these really important functions within your worship ministry. Now, let's move on to the other computer that's on the other side of our sound console, computer number two. This is our audio and video capture computer. This one is a 2018 15-inch MacBook Pro. Again, you could also get an iMac. It has a 2.2 gigahertz 6-core i7 processor, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and 256 gigabytes on the solid state drive. This is actually my daily driver. It's what I'm using right now. I use it throughout the week, and it's a pretty decently powerful computer. It's not the latest and greatest from Apple on their MacBook Pro, but it really works great for the purpose of capturing audio of our worship service and capturing video, and then being able to also, mix the audio and then also marry the audio with the video so we can easily publish things after the service. So in our context, we primarily just focus on publishing sermon audio and sermon video to our website each week. And here are the applications that make that possible. The primary one is Wirecast. So Wirecast is a great application that runs on Mac, and you can use it for capturing video as well as streaming video online. We don't stream, maybe someday we will, but it's just currently not a priority for us right now. But if we want to, Wirecast would do that for us very easily. So right now what we do is we just capture audio from the Dante network, and then we also capture video from our video camera, whichever one we're using on a given week. Still kind of experimenting with that setup right now. And that video and audio goes into Wirecast. It brings it together, and then after the service, it takes about 2 minutes to kind of edit it, chop off the beginning and the end, and then upload it to YouTube and our podcast afterwards. The next application we have on this computer is Pro Tools. This is for multi-track recording. So we just want to multi-track record in case if we want to be able to just listen to our progress as a band, as well as maybe share with you guys here on the channel the tools that we're using. I want you to be able to hear a high quality recording of this stuff. And maybe someday if we want to, record a worship album or something like that, we have the setup to do that. So Pro Tools, an important setting here is the buffer size in any of these audio related applications. You don't want it to take up more processing power than it needs. So we actually put the buffer size pretty high to 1024 samples here, and basically what that does is just gives the computer time to process that audio. We're not monitoring audio through this app. That's when you would want a lower buffer size number, like you'll see in a second with Ableton. So we just crank that buffer size all the way up, and that means Pro Tools is not going to be sucking a bunch of CPU power on this computer. Then the next application is Ableton Live. This is for vocal tuning. So we have Ableton Live intro running for really just to serve as a vehicle for the Waves Auto Tune app. And this, we put the buffer size at 128 because we really want to have more processing power allocated towards this, and we want lower latency. Because you don't want the latency to be too high going from the sound console to that computer and back to the sound console. So we have that set to 128. And then of course, for all of this audio routing, we use the Dante virtual sound card. Like I said, it's on all the computers. So on computer 2, some of the accessories we have, of course, we've got dongles to make all the necessary connections for Ethernet, for USB, for HDMI, even Thunderbolt for our Blackmagic Ultra Studio mini recorder. And then the other important accessory we use is a 1 terabyte portable solid state drive to store footage and the multi-track recording. So we don't store any of that stuff on the local drive on the computer. We just keep it on the 1 terabyte drive. So we can keep recording week after week and not really worry about space. And then once every couple months, we can decide to archive it somewhere else or just delete that footage. So that is computer number 2 in the tech booth. So now you have a sense of the computers that we run for presentation and lighting, as well as video and audio capture and even tuning. It's kind of an added bonus to computer number 2. Theoretically, it would be great to have maybe a third machine that was dedicated to just the video capture and streaming someday, and maybe the second machine was just the audio multi-track recording as well as the auto tune. So I really like separating out the different functions for machines and putting the applications on those different machines, just to make sure that you're not maxing out processing power, and you're going to drastically reduce the chances of a failure. So we found this 2-computer setup in our tech booth works really, really well. It's super portable, but yeah, at the same time, it's really powerful. Now let's move on to the stage, and this is where you're going to find computer number 3. This is a very important computer. This is our Trax Rig computer. So this machine is a 2019 15-inch MacBook Pro. This is the newest of all of our computers. This is not only our Trax rig, but this is also Ashton's primary editing rig to create YouTube videos like this or anything else you see on our channel. So we wanted to, invest and get some more processing power there. But it also works great as a Trax rig to be able to run Ableton as well as our keyboard rig, and you'll see that in a second here. So it has a 2.3 gigahertz 8-core i9 processor, so 8 cores, insane, and then 16 gigabytes of RAM, and then we got a bigger hard drive, 512 gigabytes of space on a solid state drive. So here are the applications this computer runs. We have Ableton Live to run tracks and our MIDI cues. So we run our audio files and our MIDI cues in Ableton. Just gives us a nice big canvas to put together set lists and, tweak things on the fly if we need to. Just love running things with Ableton. And then the buffer size is at 512. It could even be higher. Again, this is just a Trax rig, and it's just sending out audio. So it's not like we're having to monitor audio back through it. The buffer size, you can increase that for your Trax rig to really save on the CPU load. And then we have MainStage also running on this computer. The buffer size is lower at 128, and that's because we just want as little latency as possible for Ashton when he's playing piano. We don't want him to hit a key and then a second later actually hear it. We want that to be instant. So 128 is probably the lowest we want to go and be safe with that. And then we have the Dante virtual sound card running, sending our audio from Ableton, four channels of audio from Ableton, as well as 2 channels of audio from MainStage. And I just really, really have loved using the Dante network. It's like having unlimited audio interface inputs and outputs on these computers without actually needing to have all the hardware for it. And then finally, we use a 1 terabyte portable solid state drive to store all of our tracks and our MainStage assets. So we're not, filling up that 512 gigabyte SSD internally on the computer, but we just use that 1 terabyte solid state drive by G Drive. And you'll notice this is the same type of drive we use for the other computer. These solid state drives are not cheap, but so far we have learned that they're very fast and very reliable. So that's it. That's computer number 3 on the stage. So let's just kind of summarize what these 3 computers are doing. Computer 1 is for presentation and lighting. It's in the tech booth. Computer 2 is for audio and video capture, also in the tech booth. Computer 3 is our Trax rig and our keyboard rig on the stage. And using our MIDI network, using eye connectivity interfaces, all these computers can talk to each other very easily, but using the Dante network, they can send audio to and from one another very easily. And what's awesome about this whole thing is it's very, very quick to set up every single Sunday morning. So I can't imagine how nice it would be to have a permanent worship setup space, even using some of these same tools, because then you just turn things on and it's ready to go. A couple other notes here when it comes to our computers. computers. We do have an iPad Pro, and we simply use that for remote controlling our Midas M32R using their app to do that runs on the iPad. And then we have a large laptop bag to store all of these laptops. Actually, we store 2 of them in the bag, as well as some accessories and dongles and cables. I store my laptop in my backpack. But that's an important thing to think about when you're buying a setup like this, especially if it's portable. And again, I want to emphasize the fact that you have to make sure you get all the appropriate dongles. That is the most annoying thing. I just can't stand how many dongles we have to get. When we were actually touring Bethel Worship Setup, they had like custom-made dongles for their presentation computers, and I was so jealous of it. Even thinking of hiring the guy who made it to like make one for us, because the dongles can be really finicky sometimes. It's hard to find some good quality ones. And then lastly, I want to answer the question about PC versus Mac. I know some of you don't have Macs, and you might be wondering, can my PC do this? Yes, your PC can actually do a lot of this, and I think we're getting towards the end of the age of Macs kind of being the dominant players for production setups like this. I still my personal preference. I still think it's better, more stable, and reliable to go this route. But for a lot of these applications, they are cross-platform. Ableton is, Pro Tools is, Proclaim in ProPresenter are. So a lot of these apps that you saw here, you can find some great apps on PC for streaming and video capture. But there are some apps like Lightkey, that's Mac only, as well as MainStage, that's Mac only. So by far, Mac does have an upper edge when it comes to just the best applications that are out there. They're going to be running on a Mac. So again, I don't want to get into the whole PC versus Mac debate. I could really care less. I just want the computer that is just going to be reliable, stable, and just not crash on us in the middle of a service. And we found with this setup, it's been super reliable. And if anything ever goes wrong, it's usually our fault in terms of not setting things right. Like we didn't have the buffer sizes high enough, to ease the load of processing. So then some issues happen, or maybe I just didn't set up Dante right. Most cases, it's not the computer's fault. It's human and operator error. So I'm going to make sure to include in our worship ministry toolkit all of the computers and accessories that I mentioned in this video. So click the link below this video to download that toolkit, and you're going to be able to explore all of the gear and software that we use in our worship ministry. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you found it helpful, smash that thumbs up button, share it with your friends, your pastors, your coworkers, your colleagues, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our future videos to help you grow yourself and grow your worship ministry.